Hi, I'm Sharon Ferguson with Century 21 Redwood Realty. I fully support TV 18, and as a 14-year resident of Lake of the Woods, I love life around the lake.
Hi, we're Diane and Keith Morris from Integrity Automotive.
And we support TV 18 and love life around the lake.
Hi, Norm Allen with you here from TV 18 Life Around the Lake. All of you who have been donating and helping us with our cause here to keep Project 18 and TV 18 going, I want you to know how much we appreciate that. I also want to remind you that any of you who would like to participate in it, you may do so by making your checks out to FLOW, Friends of Lake of the Woods, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and you get a tax deduction for all of your donations. You're the reason we're on the air. You're the reason it works, because at TV 18 Life Around the Lake, the stories are all about you.
Hello, welcome to Art for Life. I'm your host, Pete Brown. Today we're going to be exploring two applications. In previous shows I've talked about paintings can be about three things: about color, information, or application. Today we're going to kind of explore more color and application. Now, to look at a bird that I've outlined here, just to get us started, this looks like it'd be about information. Very pristine egret. When I finish him, he would be just fine to be an egret, nothing in front of him, you know, blah, blah, blah. But what we want to do is create something more interesting. So my goal today is to get this background in, the bird in, and then cover him up with marsh reeds. So right now I've got a little sky color mixed where I put against this toned canvas. I toned it with burnt sienna again because I wanted something warm under it. Down in here in the bottom it's just basically a bunch of umbers and earth tones to have the base for the marsh where he's standing. And then of course our friend the heron that visits us all around here at Lake of the Woods. Everywhere I look, I see this guy flying around. So I thought I'd honor him with a painting today. So right now we're going to lay in this sky color up in here over this orange. Why did I choose orange? Well, because the complement of blue is orange, and if I just do this vague like this, we're not looking up at the sky, we're just something behind. It makes the orange, the blue makes, and the orange makes the blue shimmer. So if we do that by putting the complement next to each other, like the Impressionists did, we get a more shimmer. Now, oh my goodness, I hit the bird. That's okay. I'll come back and refine his head later, because it's not about the bird today. It's about everything else. So we're going to do this all around just to get some background behind this guy standing around. He's going to be standing somewhere on the edge of a marshy, grassy, hilly something or another. So that's the thing. Again, our backgrounds are the most important things. Now, I laid in the bird today only so it could have a place, a guide, and I've got 30 minutes to try to demonstrate what I'm doing here. So we're going to just kind of fuzz this in, keeping everything loose. The bird will show up because he's dark in some areas, lighter in others. But I'll refine his head later. You'll be able to see it on my website, PeteBrownArt.com. If you want to see the finished painting, if we get it finished today, great. If not, it'll be finished then. So I'll come back and refine his head. But right now, what I want to do is show you how to go about making something interesting out of something that could be rather boring. You know, you can take a good photograph of a heron and have a beautiful, perfectly rendered heron. I don't have to be as accurate here because I'm suggesting it. Now, this bird's proportions, I think, are fairly good, but, you know, if we set him up next to a photograph, would it measure up? I don't know, and I don't really care because I'm here to make a painting, not to copy a photo. So this guy, I just drew on there. I drew it with a little bit of charcoal for an outline so I know where I'm going. Then I just sketched it in with some umberish colored paints and grays and whites, and that's our goal. So we're just trying to get I need it today's concentration is going to be this area, so I'm just trying to get something here behind there that we can go to work. If this were all I was doing to this painting, I would be much more fussy with this, at least to get it consistent color. I'm scrubbing this in basically with a 2-inch paintbrush. You can do it any way you want. You can do this with a rag, a paper towel. That's how I did the orange with a paper towel. As you can see, the mottledness of it. We always want broken color. We don't want to homogenize it. So we want to have it. And then our sky colors are always darker at the zenith, lighter at the horizon. Now, we're not really looking up at the sky here. We're simply looking out across an expanse with some water down here, some sky colors behind this marsh grass that's going in here. This is really about marsh grass. I've done several of these tall, skinny heron paintings. They seem to be a very popular subject, particularly around the lake here. So that's why I'm doing it today, just because this guy lives here and so do I. So we're going to have another one of our neighbors here. One more, a little bit more white. I have to be careful. This white is opaque, as we said in previous lessons. If I get too much of it, you won't see any of the background. There he goes over my bird. Probably don't need that much on the bird, so wipe it out. But it stays sometimes, and that's okay. So we'll keep going here with this color down in here, a little lighter down in here, so it shows through the marsh reeds that we're putting in. And this will meet up with the water here in just a moment. Now it would be a little funnier down in here because we don't have, we're not sure what's back there. It's just looking out over an expanse. Right here in a moment we're going to have the water meeting up with this sky color. And let's get it closed in. Now, I don't usually get in this big a hurry trying to paint. I'm a little more cognizant of what I'm doing as far as what's going over what, timing-wise, etc. Basically, I'm wiping out a little bit here. That's vague enough. I don't need it to be very much defined. So a little bit of this purple area now I'm going to put into this water just to create more interest, more color. Water's always horizontal to the viewer. When you're painting water, make sure that the water is horizontal to the viewer. I'll have to redefine his legs here in a moment because I've got to get the water behind him. So remember that when you're painting water. I've seen people make mistakes of trying to have a stream flowing downhill and have the water running like that. Everything is horizontal, then overlaps coming down vertically over it. Alright, so I'm going to put this brush aside for a moment. Let me redefine his legs real quick. And we're going to get on to what our intended lesson is today, which is how to make this thing have some interest via stuff that covers him up. So I've gone all this trouble now to paint this bird. Do I have my background as good as I need it? Up to his head at least. Pretty close. Let's see. I'm not going to worry about this part right now because I'll redefine his head. That's going to be your focal point because he is a bird, because he's there. But where I can create the interest is leading up there. So let's take a look at it. May or may not get it all finished today, but we're going to go now with some, we're going to lay in some reeds. I've got water here, I've got dark at the bottom roots, so they're going to come out of here. He's maybe standing on a little flatter part of the marsh or shore. So we're going to just start laying in some various shapes here. I may need to mix up a little more greenish colors, but let's just lay in some darker ones first. So again, this is a bravery test. I went to all this trouble to paint the bird. I better refine him here first, because if I don't, I'm sorry, you won't be able to see him. So let's do that. Let's get him laid back in. And this is a good time to show you about putting some feather strokes in. So if I need to reload here in a moment, I will. So I've got him here. I don't mind that it's a little fuzzy up there because we don't want to make him too definite. The strokes that I'm putting in here now, let's see, for making a feather type stroke, I'm using the filbert brush, the tip, pulling it up, flipping it up, just suggesting that he's got long feathers here on the wings. I'm going to use a little bit of Payne's gray and regular gray here to get a bluish gray. Payne's gray is a paint color that is basically 2 parts ultramarine blue, 1 part black. You buy that pre-made in a tube. It's a little less harsh than black. I'll probably grab some more of it here in a moment to put on my palette. But that's what it is, a Payne's gray. So I'm going to use a little more Payne's gray. I'm also mixing in regular gray with that and a tiny touch of black. So I have some violet on the palette right next to it. If I want to put more on the shadow side, I'll use the violet into it. So down in here, maybe some of the violet. But this is kind of again, when I go back to his head, up in here, now if I start laying here, these feather strokes, I start them from the bottom and overlap them, just build the feathers. Maybe up in here for right now, good enough. I'll come back and redefine his head, neck area, but just to get it laid in. Now I got that a little dark in some spots, so I'll just come back with a lighter shade over that to make it come through. When I did the white, what's important in painting anything white, whether it's white feathers on a bird or snow, it always has to have a gray underneath it. You can't start with white. You can't start with the color you see first. So you've got to get everything underpainted. This is basically an underpainting of this bird. I have not really tried to define him as much as I can, but I will come back up in here with whatever isn't covered up by the marsh weeds, and I'll define it a little better. So I want to get that in there. Let me get his wings a little bit darker here, just so we see them when we put the reeds and such over them. We're looking for an excuse to use color, an excuse to use texture, surface. All right, and we're going to call that good enough for now. All right, so I'm going to try now. I'm going to stop for 1 minute, mix up a little more of the colors I need, and I'll be back in just a moment to continue.
I'm Norm Allen with you on TV 18. Well, we're back on location again to bring you more great stories about our community and the places that we live. Because this is not only about where we live, but it's about how we live. You'll find that and other great shows right here on TV 18, Life Around the Lake. Because after all, the stories, they're all about you.
Welcome back. While we were away, I cheated a little bit. I put a little more sky color in, and I refined the bird just a little bit more. I want to quickly just show you a couple of strokes on creating the feather effect using a small filbert brush. Once I've got a nice gray under here, I can get the white feather look. I will come back to this later in this area of the bird, all of our whites, but the feather strokes are just simple little pulls, etc. I'm not going to be hitting this area much up here right now because I'm going to be concentrating on what I told you our intent was today, which is to get some color down here over this bird. Down below, on the bottom of this guy, I'm going to pretty much destroy. So, well, I'll make it more interesting. I don't want to say destroy. So that's right there is just enough to indicate where we're going with this, but a little white here. As you can see, under this white is a lot of gray, always gray under the white to make the white work. So that's just how I went about those strokes. I'll fix all of this later. I'm painting up over my head, can't see it as well, but that's how we do it. All right, now let's get on to the meat of today's lesson, which is putting something over this, so I don't have something that's boring. So I'm going to start with just some strokes to indicate some grassy, reedy type of things. bravery test. Here goes. We don't want to, you know, I'm not going to coddle this guy. I'm going to make him kind of wish, you know, he was standing somewhere else maybe if he wanted to be full screen on camera all the time. But that's not his fate today. He's going to be just kind of covered up with stuff. We want all kinds of stuff over him. And that takes lots of stuff. Right now I'm just simply laying in where this stuff is going to go. Stuff, 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 and stuff. What I'm using is a combination of raw umber, raw sienna, some burnt umber, all of the earth tones. I'll start mixing in a little greenish color into that too. For my greens I typically mix, obviously yellows and blue make green. So a variety of those to try to get some variety in color. I never completely homogenize my greens. The best starting point for greens, if you're doing a lot of foliage, is usually a lemon yellow and an ultramarine blue. Mixed together creates a permanent green light. From that you step it up or down. Always a little bit of red into your greens so that they don't look garish out of the tube. You want to have variety. So I'm going to go a little more, start going a little greener now with these things. And in a moment I'll go to the palette knife, because what our interest is broken color. So you'll see I'm not fussing over these things. I'm just putting them in. We want to cover all that stuff in the background with something more interesting, which will be all this color that I am able to lay on here. So first the strokes, just to establish some of these things. We'll redefine them. We're not worried about covering our little bird guy up because that's his fate today. I'll work a little more blue and white into this stuff now over here. What you want to think about always is contrast, darks over lights, lights over darks. Where I've got the darkness of this bird, I need lighter paint for it to show. Over here against the sky, anything will do. So I just keep going here. If you're going to commit to doing a marsh or something like this, you got to have a lot of it. You can't half step. So we want to cover his legs up. His legs aren't very pretty, so we're going to cover them. He's kind of like mine. I'm bow-legged. If I weren't so bow-legged, I'd be 6'2", but I'm about 5'7". So this guy doesn't have bow legs. He's got long, skinny legs. We just want to know they're there. We don't have to see them. We don't have to see every detail of everything. It's always a matter of choices of what you see, what you choose to emphasize. Obviously, the focus on this guy at the end will be his head. But until then, now I'm going to start going to a different brush. It's time to get a lot more stuff in here. So I'm going to do it with this kind of brush now. I'm going to go, so I can get the volume I'm looking for, I'm using about an 1.5 inch wide brush, and I'm just going to start dragging color up in here. So that kind of fills in the stuff that's there already. So everything, if I sit here and try to paint every blade of grass forever, it won't look very good. It'll be sparse. But if I do this, if I get a lot of color going, a lot of volume, skipping, then I'll go back and define those reeds with some actual strokes. Now it's time to start putting some more color in here. We're going to orange it up a bit. And what I'm doing when I do this stroke is take the brush, load it up pretty thick, but then a very light touch, starting, pulling, and letting it skip and jump. Now that's starting to show because it's a different color. And again, we let the canvas take what it needs by doing it this way. I'm holding this brush very loose. It wouldn't take much for it to fall out of my hand. So if I do this, and we're starting to see something a lot more interesting than just a bird standing there looking out into space. I'm going to do a little more. I'm working predominantly now in the yellows. I've mixed a raw sienna, a primary yellow, and a more lemony yellow. I'm dragging it into the green that I already have so that it kind of mixes in there. And I'm also rolling this brush edge to edge. not just all flat. I'm using the edge sometime, this edge, that edge, just getting stuff. All right, now let's get some more red into this to make it orange-fied. And I'm going to, down in the bottom, I'll put more purplish colors. I'm going to jump to a different brush right now. I'm going to get something a little wider, maybe, for more interesting individual type strokes. This may be too soft, but let's see. It doesn't seem to be working as well as I hoped, so let's try. Let's see if we can see it now. Rolling the brush edge to edge. Yep, that's what I'm looking for. I've got a lot of paint on it, just like with the larger brush, but I'm going to start it on one corner, roll it over, flip it around, and just to drag up. And we want this guy to not be so pristine. And in a moment, we'll slip to the palette knife and do more of the same. If we have time, I'll refine our guy a little more. But right now, I just want him to be covered with stuff, better stuff. And the contrast again with the yellow, and that shows. Just for a moment, I'm going to demonstrate some more with the palette knife. Here we go. Now I'm going to pull these strokes down this way to create volume. If I get enough surface and volume, all of a sudden I've created interest with very little work, without having to draw every blade of grass. If I emphasize a few here and there, I get the effect that I'm looking for. All we're doing when we're doing painting really is suggestion. We're not here to see how accurate we've made marsh reeds. We're here to see how interesting we can make this thing look. Again, the subject of our paintings, even though there's a big old bird sitting there, is always the paint. It's not about the thing, the object we're doing. I'm going to take some purple over here now and get some more shadowy stuff down here in the bottom. But it's about the paint. How you handle the paint. If you handle it well, get it nice and thick in some spots and thinner in others. Everything all thick doesn't make it any more interesting than all thin. It just depends on what you've got in mind for the particular painting. Now that violet is very harsh. I'm going to step some of this down. I'm going to start working some gray into here because with our paintings, grays give us a place to rest our eyes. If we don't have any gray in a painting, it can begin to look very garish. So we want to have gray, we want to have violets for shadows, and we want to have just color in general. Let's go back to some more of the greenish tones. We got to have more stuff here. But it's starting to create some interest. I hope it's interesting to you. Over there by our bird guy, we've got to be able to see them. So let's put them this way. Between the brush, the palette knife, we can do either. If we don't like what we got, I've got a little tool here. This rubber tipped tool, I don't like that particular one, so I'll just flick it up, make it different. Put a little end on it, like that. There you go. When you're working more thick in the finishes, everything starts thin, but as you get toward the end of the painting, it's like sculpting on the canvas. You're kind of, you're not just putting the flat of the brush on there and drawing with the paintbrush. You're handling paint in a manner that lets it have interest. The subject is the paint. How did you handle the paint? There's a big old palette knife here. There we go. Let's create some orange effects here. Reddish, orangish, because that's a complement of green. The red is. Let's get some of that in there. Because the more color we put into this marsh, the more interesting this will be. We're not just then worried about, oh, did he draw the bird perfectly? How does it all look? So some of these red strokes, again, maybe a little strong. I'm going to come back with some more of the raw sienna in here, which is more like a yellow ochre kind of color, to get a little more of that. You'll see that I'm very casual about this, not fussy. It won't pay you to be fussy in this area. I'm going to go to some darker stuff in the bottom because that's how we would see it. It's not going to show as well because I've already got dark down there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to skip back over to my brush and start figuring out what I want in that bottom. So I got a lot of stuff up there. I don't have as much as I'm going to end up with, but I'll probably do some more. I may flick some of this stuff out just to kind of reshape, redo for the bottom area. Let's get some darker stuff. Greenish but darkish. So we got some stuff in here. More of our purplish. That ain't purplish, that's just straight up purple. But with it being lighter strokes, it'll fit the mold of what I need. All I'm trying to do is create the illusion that we're kind of looking through this grasses. I'm going to set this up on the edge so I can take it right off the page. That's another thing. It's important to remember that your edges of your painting, where you're going with it, let it come off the page. I don't have this bird contained. The tip of his beak is off of the page. His tail is off the page, therefore creating more interest. If you're doing painting of people, figure painting, you want to have, don't have it all self-contained. Don't put it all in the center. Spread things around. Lose one side of the body. In fact, when I did figure painting classes years ago, my instructor said, lose the figure on 3 sides. In other words, you want to just have it, you want to concentrate on one part, not everything. So, in this case, these darker darks down in here now give us a suggestion that we're looking through and we're seeing the tops with more color, more brilliance. So I probably should have started with these, but I didn't. So we just kind of put them in, keep going, and I'll go back here in a moment. If we have time, I'll work more on the bird so you can see him finished. If I don't get him finished, you will see him on my website, PeteBrownArt.com. Also, if you were interested in having a painting demonstration or workshop on painting, I would be glad to do that for you. So you'll just contact me at the end of the show. My phone number is on there. My website is on there. And if you're a group, if you have a painting group that would like a demo or a painting workshop, be glad to help you or do that. All right, so I'm getting it down there. It's getting better. Probably need a little more yellowish stuff in here. Again, just stuff. Now I'm going back with the brush, lighter touches. I'm going to grab a little more of our yellowish color. Here's some heavy-bodied yellow. Work that into the mixtures I already have, which are, again, there's 3 different yellows. We want to have a variety, nothing homogenized. We want our paint marbled as it appears on here. So I'm mixing these yellows in here. Yellows, reds to make oranges, violets. Let's go right on through him here so we get, and some of the stuff we put in earlier is kind of behind him. We leave those alone. We don't want to do every one of these. So we want to have depth. When you're working portrait size like this, it's hard to create depth. So we leave some of these loose ones that we first put in, we leave those alone. We emphasize the ones in front of him. So if we can do that, then we've got, what's behind what? Always the case, whether it's florals, people, landscapes. In earlier shows we did landscapes. We overlap shapes and to create distance. We overlap shapes. We diminishing sizes, diminishing colors. And we want to give some of these a little curve so they're not all straight up and down. And let's get up over him. And if we put it over him, it kind of helps to show us that he's, and it doesn't hurt to go right on off of the page with him. Now, for a lot of times when you've done so much work on something like a bird or something that's pretty that you really like, it's very hard to get brave enough to cover it with stuff. But if you start doing it and trying it and get used to making paint the subject of your paintings, I think you will be far more happier with what you end up with. If you paint it pristine, I think I can draw very well, but I can't outdraw a camera. So, but there are artists who do photorealistic work, and it is absolutely amazing. The odds of me doing that are not that good. So for me to do something that I can create interest, I'll have a lot more people come up and go, ooh, over this stuff, than I will about, oh, how did it get the eye? So I can make a fairly good rendering of this egret, and it would be okay if it were by itself, though. It might look like calendar art, you know, something that, a hat hanger. Oh, yeah, that's a bird, and off you go. But this way, you're more tempted to look at it. How did he do that? What is this? Just look at all that paint. Oh, I love the texture, you'll hear a lot of times. And what they're talking about in texture really is surface, because of the paint standing up. So if you can get the paint to stand up, if you can get the paint to look thicker, if you can get multiple colors in it, everywhere I've got this purple now, if I can come back and get just the tiniest bit of yellow or violet and yellow. Why? Because they're complementary colors. So you can see I'm dragging a little back through it. Here's some purple, a little bit there, a little bit there. It's just a matter of playing back and forth. One thing, not all one color, some of this dark again, back and forth, light touches, light flicks, reshaping, redoing. I'll probably work this bird a little more around the head area later, just to get him so he's pretty, but we're about out of time now, so a couple strokes here and there, one more up over his neck won't hurt him, and maybe one over here. So I hope you'll start painting. Again, if you have questions, give me a call. My number will be showing up at the end of the show. And I hope you'll pick up your brushes and experiment and try and practice. It's like any other thing. You practice it, you get better. Some of the earliest paintings I ever did, I would be ashamed to show you now. But they get better as we go. And as long as we keep doing it, keep trying, and keep having fun, you'll find it's an enjoyable way and something you can do for the rest of your life. Grandma Moses was in her 90s when she started painting. I'm getting there, but we keep on doing it. We keep on having fun. So I hope you'll join me again on the next series, a next lesson on Art for Life. Again, I'm your host, Pete Brown. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.
This is the crew from the Flower Cottage. We are excited to support TV18. We love life around the lake.
This is Michael from Red, White, Blue, and Brew, your neighborhood shop for beer, wine, and cheese. We love TV18 and life around the lake.